What up, people of the internet? Um, I have decided to go ahead and start sharing my stories with you just to see what y'all think. Um, I'm just going to do this as I write them, so that way it'll give me the drive to actually finish these projects. So, today I am going to share the first 5 chapters of my book that I titled Always, which is a forbidden love type of story. Um, so, hang on a second. Yeah, that's not gonna work. So I'll just do it this way. It's all good. It's all good. Chapter 1, and this is from Matilda's point of view. I'm gonna be doing. Matilda is the main character, and so is David. And then there is Michael and Samantha. Michael is her father, which you'll find out later something else about Michael. But so, and her mom Frida, who is just kind of like a side character. She's not really a main character. But anyway, so chapter 1. Mom, Dad, guess what? Matilda Lansing asked in a tone of excitement. What, sweetheart? Her father, Michael, asked with a smile on his face. He always loved how excited she got about things. It didn't take much. There's a convenience store up the street that carries blue gummy bears, she replied and grinned from ear to ear. Michael's smile widened. Frida, her mother, had a worried expression on her face. Your favorite candy, Michael stated, expression unchanging. Matilda nodded excitedly. Can I walk down there and get some? Maddie, honey, I don't think that's such a good idea, Frida said, worried in her tone. Matilda frowned. Why not? It's only 2 blocks away. Matilda, accidents happen within a mile or 2 of your home, Frida pointed out. Frida, Maddie is 14. She'll be fine, Michael tried to assure his wife. Frida sighed. Fine, but go straight there and straight back. Don't dawdle, she said in a firm tone. I'll be quick, Matilda promised. Take Sam with you, Frida said in a rushed tone before Michael and Matilda stepped outside. Here's $10. Thanks, Dad. You're welcome, honey. How come Mom is so protective? She never lets me do anything alone. She's just naturally a worrier. You don't seem worried about me going to the store. I am worried, Maddie, but you're old enough now to walk 2 blocks, he pointed out. I love you and be safe, he added and kissed her forehead. I love you too. I'll be back soon. Matilda didn't get far when her best friend Samantha Johnson approached her. Hey, Maddie, where are you going? Sam asked curiously. Just up the street to the convenience store. They have blue gummy bears. Sam rolled her eyes. You're obsessed. Guilty. Do you want to come? No, I have to get home to finish doing chores. I just came over to return your bracelet. Just climb through the window like you always do and put it in my jewelry box, Matilda replied with a laugh. Sam laughed along with her. See you later, Matilda said and walked away. Hang on a second. Hello, how you? A Korean woman greeted the moment Matilda entered the store. I'm good, how are you? Good, I Sue. I'm Matilda. Call you Da? Matilda smiled. Of course. Need help? I'm looking for the gummy bears, Matilda replied as she looked around. Row 3. Thanks, Matilda replied and walked down the aisle. When she spotted the gummy bears, she discovered they were only $1 apiece, so she grabbed 9 bags. She carried them to the front and set them on the counter. Sue laughed. You love gummy bears. Matilda smiled. Yes, very much. I make sure to keep stocked. Thank you so much. Grab another bag. I only have $10. What about tax? No tax, Sue replied with a wink. Matilda smiled and quickly grabbed another bag. Me, my husband, and 2 children moved here from South Korea. We wanted a better life. When we moved here, we not have much, Sue said as she rang up the gummy bears. Matilda stood quietly and listened. She didn't want to interrupt Sue. When Sue finished with her story, she handed Matilda a shopping bag with her bags of gummy bears in it. Thank you, Da. What are you thanking me for? Matilda asked curiously. Listening to a story. Buying candy, she replied with a smile. Matilda smiled back. Come back tomorrow? Absolutely, Matilda replied as her smile widened. Matilda waved goodbye and left. 2 weeks later, Matilda was about to head to the convenience store again. Michael handed her $10. Just be safe, sweetheart, okay? I will. I've been going every night and nothing bad has happened, she pointed out. I know, but I still worry. I'll be fine, she promised. Okay, I love you, he said and gave her a quick peck on the forehead. I'll be back in a little bit, she promised and left. Da! Sue greeted in an excited tone the moment Matilda entered the store. Hey, Sue, how are you? Good, good. How you? I'm good too. How's business? Could be better. If I buy more bags of candy, would that help? Maybe, Sue replied with a smile. Matilda smiled back and walked down the aisle. The moment she grabbed a couple of bags, the bell above the store rang 5 times simultaneously. Matilda froze in place and her stomach dipped. No one had ever come in the store at the same time as her, and now there were 5 people. Scream or make any sudden moves and I'll blow your fucking head off, she heard a guy's voice threaten. When she heard a click, she gasped and accidentally dropped the bag of candy. Go get her, the same voice instructed. 2 guys her age came down the aisle. One grabbed her from behind and held a switchblade to her throat. The other grabbed her arm, and they led her to the front of the store. The guy with the gun, who she presumed to be the leader, turned his gaze to her as he continued to point the gun at Sue. She had her hands up and an expression of fear on her face. I'll deal with you in a minute, the gunman said with a smirk. He turned his attention back to Sue. This is what's going to happen. You're going to take the money out of the cash register, put it in a bag, set it on the counter, and step away. Do as you're told, and I'll let you both go, he instructed in a too calm tone. Sue's hands shook as she did exactly as she was told. Before Matilda knew what was happening, she heard the gun go off. Sue! Matilda screamed as she watched Sue's lifeless body hit the floor. Sue's blood and brains had splattered on the wall when the bullet penetrated her forehead. Matilda's body shook with fear as the gunman turned and pointed the gun right at her face. What are we going to do with you? He asked with a smirk. Matilda was too scared to say anything. She wanted to plead for them to let her go. She wanted to beg for her life. She wanted to scream or run, but she was too traumatized to even open her mouth. The only thing she could do was stare wide-eyed at the barrel of the gun. She slowly closed her eyes and waited for the gun to go off. Instead, she felt something hard hit her on the top of the head, and she fell unconscious. When Matilda woke up, she found herself in an old abandoned house. Dirt and dust caked the floor. There were cobwebs in each corner of the room. Matilda tried to sit up, but her head was pounding. She winced from the pain. The one who had held the knife to her throat entered the room. Matilda forced herself into a sitting position on the floor, even though her head was throbbing. Please let me go, she pleaded, her tone desperate. Shut the fuck up, he growled and kicked her in the face. The blow to her face knocked out a couple of teeth and busted her lip open, causing her to scream in pain. The leader suddenly rushed into the room, grabbed the other guy's throat, and slammed him against the wall. Not yet, the leader hissed. I told you not to fuck up her face. Look what you did. You knocked out some of her teeth and busted her lip. I specifically told you to save that shit for after. I'm sorry. Her pleading for her fucking miserable life pissed me off, he replied in an angry tone. Who fucking cares? Let her beg and plead all she wants. That shit turns me on, the leader said with a smirk. Matilda gently lay back down and tried to ease the pain in her head. The leader walked over to Matilda and knelt beside her. He grabbed her face and forced her to look at him. He pulled the gun out and forced the barrel of it into her mouth. Oh, I should have warned you. There's trigger warnings, rape, violence, sexual assault, abuse, incest, so all that stuff. So just... Now I'm telling you. Okay, so where was I? Matilda gently laid back down and tried to ease the pain in her head. The leader walked over to Matilda and knelt beside her. He grabbed her face and forced her to look at him. He pulled the gun out and forced the barrel of it into her mouth. Matilda's body shook with fear. "Suck on it," he said with a smirk. When she didn't comply, he smacked her across the face. She winced from the pain. "Suck on it, now!" Tears streamed down her face as she did what she was told. The leader moaned in response while the others laughed at her humiliation. I bet you'd be good at sucking cock," he smirked. The boys laughed harder. The leader motioned for the guy who held the knife to her throat to kneel on the other side of her. "Take out your knife," the leader instructed. The guy took out his switchblade and opened it. "What do you want me to do, Mitch?" the guy asked the leader. Mitch punched him in the face. "I said no names, fucktard." "Why the fuck does it matter? We're going to kill her anyway," he pointed out. Mitch shrugged. "Good point. Cut her clothes off, Luke." "No, please," she mumbled due to the fact the gun was still in her mouth. "Shut up and keep sucking," Mitch demanded. One of the other guys took off her shoes and socks. "Get back," Mitch instructed. The boys moved away. Mitch started unfastening his pants. "No, please," she pleaded as she tried to push him away. Mitch pulled the gun out of her mouth long enough to shoot her in the arm. Matilda screamed. The scream was soon muffled by the barrel of the gun once more. Mitch pulled his pants down and shoved himself inside her. Matilda screamed and scratched his face with her right hand. "Bitch," Mitch winced. Hold her fucking arms down, Luke." Luke quickly grabbed her arms and held them to the floor above her head. All Matilda could do was cry as Mitch raped her. Her dreams of losing her virginity to her soulmate diminished. When Mitch finished, Luke went next. Matilda scratched him on the face with her left hand before one of the other guys pinned her arms down. As Luke raped her, Mitch continued to make her suck on the gun. After Luke was done, the other three took their turn, and then they sat around drinking. Mitch forced beer down Matilda's throat, which caused her to choke. They all just laughed at her. One of the boys urinated on her face, and as Mitch sodomized her with the barrel of the gun, Matilda's body tensed as she screamed, "Please stop," she choked out. No words were said. They laughed instead. "Please let me go. I swear I won't tell anyone. Just please let me go home," she begged. Mitch left the gun in her ass as he smoked a cigarette. When he was done smoking, he used her leg as an ashtray. Matilda screamed and thrashed. Mitch clicked his tongue, tisking her. Mitch and Luke dragged her into the bathroom and forced her to take a cold shower. After she showered, they dragged her back out to the living room and proceeded to rape her again. Their routine went on for hours. They would rape her, have a drink, a smoke, torture her some more, and rape her again. At that point, Matilda wished that they would just kill her already. She wasn't sure how much more she could take. What happened next, Matilda didn't see it coming. They all took out their switchblades and started cutting and stabbing her all over. Matilda screamed until her body went numb. She knew she was going to die. She felt weak and cold. The life was slowly and painfully draining from her body. When they finally stopped, Mitch and Luke picked her up. They carried her out to the backyard and dug a shallow grave. They picked her up and tossed her into the hole, like a discarded piece of trash. "Rest in peace, bitch," Mitch said, and spat on her grave after they finished covering her with dirt. The boys all laughed as they walked away. Not sure how she managed to find the strength, she crawled out of the grave. She gasped for breath as air entered her lungs. She crawled her way toward the street in front of the house. She laid in the middle of the road and hoped someone would come along to save her soon. She wasn't sure how much longer she could survive. Lights suddenly rounded the bend in the road, came to a screeching halt. Strong arms suddenly lifted her off the asphalt as gently as they could. Matilda opened her eyes enough to see her savior's eyes. They were brown with green flecks. "Thank you," she whispered as the unknown man stared at Matilda with utter fear in his eyes. "Just hang in there," he said in a tone of panic as he rushed to his car. Matilda fell unconscious the moment her naked form touched the back seat of his car. So then this next part is in David's point of view. Chapter 2. "David, it's so good to see you," Yvonne, David's adoptive mother, said in a cheerful tone as she gave him a hug. "It's good to see you too. Sorry I haven't been able to visit in a while," he replied apologetically. No worries, son. We're just happy you could come." Decker, David's adoptive father, said happily as he pulled David in for a hug. Where's Luke? David questioned as he looked around. He's out with friends tonight. Besides, we wanted to talk to you about something, Decker said as his smile widened. Have a seat. Dinner is ready. They all sat at the dining room table. Yvonne had made spaghetti with meatballs and garlic bread. This looks delicious, Mom. Thank you, David said in a tone of appreciation. You're welcome. What did you want to talk to me about? David asked curiously. How would you like to come work with me? Decker asked, still smiling. David's mouth fell open mid-bite. Are you serious? Of course, I want to train you to eventually take over the company. But I'm not your biological son, David pointed out. Decker gave him a stern look. Blood or no blood, David, you're my son. You know better than to talk like that. I'm sorry, you're right, I shouldn't have said that. Yvonne and Decker adopted him when he was just a baby, due to the fact they couldn't have their own kids. David doesn't know anything about his biological parents or why they gave him up, and has been too scared to ask them. What do you say? Do you want to come and work alongside your old man? Yes, of course, David replied immediately. Great. Now eat before the food gets cold. I'm sitting on some news myself, David said in a cautious tone. I hope it's a good one. Oh, I hope it's good news, Yvonne said as she gave David a nervous glance. I've decided to ask Janet to marry me, he replied and looked down at his plate. Yvonne and Decker never liked Janet. They felt she was only with David because he was rich. You already know how we feel about Janet. I know, David interrupted Decker. May I finish? Decker asked as he tried to stay calm. Yes, sorry. As I was saying, you know how we feel about Janet, but we can't tell you what to do. You're 24 and can make your own decisions. We just want you to be happy. Thanks, Dad. I appreciate you and Mom both. We love you, David, Yvonne said as she reached across the table and squeezed David's hand. I love you both, too. Best parents in the world, he replied with a smile. They fell silent for a brief moment before David spoke. Do you know anything about my biological parents? David asked in a cautious tone. I was wondering if you would ever bring that up, Decker said as he put his fork down. I was always afraid to ask. I didn't want to upset you. David, honey, you have every right to ask about your biological parents. Unfortunately, though, we don't know anything. They wanted to remain anonymous, Yvonne explained. That's okay. It's not really that important. I was just curious why they gave me up for adoption. I don't know, honey. It could have been a number of reasons. They could have been teenagers and not ready to take on the responsibility. They could have been struggling financially and couldn't afford to take care of you. Who knows? They also could have just not wanted me. If that's the case, they shouldn't have been having sex, David pointed out. I don't understand how they couldn't want you, David. You're perfect. You were such an easy and laid-back child. We didn't really have any problems with you. Unlike Luke, David finished her sentence. Yvonne let out a frustrated sigh. Luke seemed to always be in trouble for something. It would be anywhere from petty theft to armed robbery. Yvonne and Decker seemed to always keep him from going to jail for his crimes. Luke was 6 years younger than David and had quite the rap sheet. At that moment, Yvonne's phone rang. What? Okay, I'm on my way, Yvonne said in a rushed tone and hung up. What's wrong? Decker questioned. It's Luke. He's been arrested. What for now? David asked, concern in his tone. He's an accomplice to armed robbery of a convenience store and the murder of the owner, she replied in a tone of panic. David shook his head in disappointment. Sorry to cut the dinner short, son, Decker said as he stood. It's okay. Do you need me to come with you? No, we'll take care of it, Yvonne replied as she grabbed her purse. Feel free to take leftovers with you. Yvonne and Decker gave David a hug and a kiss before they left. David quickly cleaned up, put leftovers away, and left. As David rounded the bend toward his place, a feeling of panic washed over him as he slammed on the brakes. A girl laid in the middle of the road. She looked like she was covered with a mixture of dirt and blood. David rushed out of the car and over to her. Was she dead? What should he do? He bent down and gently picked her up. The moment he cradled her against his chest, she opened her eyes and whispered, "Thank you." Just hang in there, he said in a tone of panic as he rushed to his car. He gently laid her in the back seat, grabbed a blanket out of the trunk, covered her with it, and drove like a bat out of hell to the hospital. David ran into the hospital with the girl in his arms. "Help! Someone help me!" he hollered as he scanned the area. Nurses rushed to him, took the girl, and gently placed her on a gurney. Stay here, one of the nurses said in a firm tone. David nodded, and the nurse jogged away. It didn't take long for the cops to show up to question him. What's your name? David Evans. The cop raised an eyebrow at him. Are you Luke Evans' brother? Yes. What does that have to do with the girl? David questions. I'll ask the questions, Mr. Evans. Yes, sir. Where did you find the girl? David told him. Did you touch her? Well, yes. How do you think I got her here? David was getting frustrated. He was trying to remain calm, but this cop wasn't making it easy. No need to cock an attitude, Mr. Evans. I'm just gathering information. Sorry. I'm just concerned about the girl. Is she going to be okay? Why? Did you do that to her? What? No. I would never do such a thing. Like I told you, I found her like that. I even told you where I found her. Besides, I was at dinner with my parents, so there's no way I could have possibly done it. Well, that's all I need from you right now. What's a good number I can reach you if I have more information? 5550101. Thank you, Mr. Evans, the cop said after he jotted down the number, and then he walked away. David decided to stick around the hospital and hope someone would tell him the girl would be okay. Finding her like that was the most horrific thing he had ever seen. Her lying in the middle of the road, completely caked in blood and dirt, flashed in his mind. He shivered as he tried to push the image out, but it failed. Hours went by, and still no word. A doctor suddenly approached David. Are you the one who brought the girl to us? Yes, I am. Is she going to be okay? Only time will tell. She's in a coma right now. You may have saved her life, though. Would you like to leave your contact information just in case? David ran a hand through his hair as he weighed his options. What if she died? Leaving his number would be pointless if she died. What if she lived and just didn't call him? That would devastate him as well. Sir? No, that's okay. All I ask is do your best to take care of her. I will even pay for it. Whatever it takes. Make sure she survives, he replied in a firm tone. And you are? My father and I own Evans Incorporated. Send her bills there, and I'll take care of it, David replied and walked away. Okay, this next chapter is Michael's point of view. Chapter 3. Michael and Frida sat on the couch and watched television as they talked. Where could she be, Michael? She was supposed to go straight there and straight back, Frida said in a tone of panic. Let's try not to panic just yet. Sue could just be telling her story. They seem to have become really close these past 2 weeks. Maddie talks about her all the time. A story that takes 3 hours to tell? Frida questioned as her panic rose. Michael knew she made a good point. He quickly grabbed his phone and called the store. The phone just rang and rang. Michael started to panic himself. After the 12th ring, he hung up. Before he had a chance to call the police, his phone rang, which caused him to jump. He answered it and put the phone on speaker. Hello? Michael asked. Hello, my name is Dr. Susan Templer, and I'm looking for a Mr. Michael Lansing and Mrs. Frida Lansing. This is Michael, and Frida is here as well, he replied as fear began to well up inside him. I'm going to need you to come to the hospital right away. I'm afraid your daughter is in critical condition. Oh God, what's happened to my baby? Frida questioned as she choked back a sob. I'll explain everything when you get here, Dr. Templer said in a rushed tone. We're on our way, Michael replied as he and Frida rushed out of the house. When Michael and Frida arrived at the hospital, they were greeted by a nurse. I'm afraid Dr. Templer doesn't have time to talk. Matilda needs surgery now, or she will die. I'm sorry. I can try to answer your questions the best I can. What happened to her? Is she going to be okay? Where is she? Frida, honey, berating her with multiple questions at once won't get us anywhere, Michael said as he placed a hand on her shoulder. Frida fell silent, except for the crying. What happened? Michael asked as calmly as he could, considering the circumstances. All I know for sure is that someone who wishes to stay anonymous brought her in. She has multiple cuts and stab wounds on 95% of her body. Frida gasped, interrupting the woman. What? Michael questioned, panic rising further. How do you know this anonymous person didn't hurt Matilda? Frida questioned. Because the police questioned him. Him? Oh God, Michael, what if he did? And he gets away with it? There is some internal bleeding, so the doctor has to operate to see where the bleeding is coming from and attempt to fix it. Attempt? Michael questioned with a frown. The stab wounds were quite extensive, sir. Oh God, Frida sobbed. How long will the surgery take? Michael questioned. I'm not sure, sir. It could take hours. Michael let out a sad sigh. Thank you for your time. The nurse nodded. Just have a seat, and the doctor will come out to talk to you as soon as she's done with the surgery. Thanks again, Michael said. He and Frida took a seat in the waiting room. Michael kept looking at the clock nervously while he bounced his leg and chewed on his thumbnail. Frida would go back and forth between looking around the room and staring at Michael. 3 hours crawled by as they waited for answers. Michael had so many questions. Who would do such a thing to someone as sweet and caring as Maddie? Would the police find the culprits? Would Maddie survive? What if she died? Michael quickly shoved the thoughts out of his head. Maddie would survive. He had to believe that. She was rather strong for her age. Michael? Michael! Frida practically yelled, which snapped him back to the present. He looked at her. I've been trying to talk to you for 15 minutes, she said in a tone of frustration. Sorry. I guess I'm just in shock. What did you say? You shouldn't have let her go, Michael. None of this would have ever happened if you would have just said no. It's not like I knew this was going to happen. It's not like I purposely put her in danger. Christ, Frida, you act like I did this to her. I never said that, she argued back. You might as well have. You might as well have said, Mr. and Mrs. Lansing? A woman's voice interrupted. Yes, Michael asked as he looked at the woman talking to them. I'm Dr. Templar. She introduced herself as she extended her right hand. Michael shook it, and Frida stared at it as if it contained the plague. Dr. Templar let her hand fall to her side. How is she? Michael asked in a nervous tone. I'm afraid Matilda has sustained a lot of injuries from the stabbing alone. I managed to stitch up the main areas. Unfortunately, I had to do a full hysterectomy. Wait, what? Why? Frida questioned with a frown. Mrs. Lansing, whoever stabbed her hit the uterus, the ovaries, and severed her fallopian tubes. There was just too much damage to fix it, so removal was the best option, I'm afraid, Dr. Templar explained. How is she, though? Please tell me she'll survive, Michael pleaded. Right now, Matilda is in coma. Frida gasped. There's more, Dr. Templar said in a cautious tone. What do you mean, there's more? Michael asked after he swallowed hard. Maddie appears to have been raped. Oh my God, Frida cried. By more than one person, the doctor added. Luckily, that leaves evidence of who they are. If these boys have ever been in trouble with the law, they shouldn't be hard to find. I've sent all the evidence to the police. So this next chapter is in Matilda's point of view. Chapter 4. A month later. When Matilda woke up from her coma, she discovered she was in the hospital. Her parents, along with Samantha, all looked at her with sad expressions on their faces. Maddie, thank God, Michael said in a tone of relief as he approached the bed and gently laid his hand on hers. My God, Maddie, what happened to you? Who did this to you? Frida questioned, panic in her tone. Frida, honey, Maddie just woke up. Hounding her with questions will only cause her more stress, Michael pointed out in as calm a tone as he could. I'm so glad you're going to be okay, Maddie. Sorry, wrong tone. I'm so glad you're going to be okay, Maddie, Sam said with a half smile. How are you feeling, Maddie? Michael asked in a tone of concern. Maddie shrugged and winced in pain. I brought you a bag of gummy bears, some magazines, and I've been reading to you every day, Sam said as she showed her the Count of Monte Cristo by Alexandre Dumas. I know it's your favorite book, she added with a smile. Tears formed in Maddie's eyes. How bad do I look? Maddie asked in a low whisper. The swelling has gone down on your face, and the bruises are starting to fade. You're going to have some reconstructive surgery, Michael explained in a soothing tone. At that moment, the doctor entered the room. I'm so glad to see you awake, Maddie. I was starting to worry. My name is Dr. Susan Templar, but you can call me Sue. Maddie started to sob uncontrollably. Sue, she whimpered. Shit. Michael cursed under his breath as he went to try to comfort Maddie, only to have her pull away. Did I say something wrong? Dr. Templar asked cautiously. The woman at the convenience store was named Sue, Michael replied in a sad tone. Oh my. I'm so sorry, Maddie. Just call me Susan, or Dr. Templar, whichever is more comfortable for you. I didn't mean to upset you, dear, Dr. Templar said in an apologetic tone. Matilda wiped some tears away with the back of her hand and looked at the doctor. What's the plan, Dr. Templar? Frida asked, changing the subject. Well, Maddie is going to have quite a few surgeries to correct the damage. She will have to have oral surgery to fix her broken teeth. All of a sudden, Matilda started to scream and thrash. What's happening? Michael asked as he tried to soothe Matilda. She is most likely having a flashback. Flashback? Samantha questioned. Yes. This is a sign of post-traumatic stress disorder. It's very common in people who have endured a lot of trauma, Dr. Templar explained. Samantha looked from Dr. Templar to Matilda. Will she get better? Sam questioned as she choked back a sob. With the right medication and therapy, I don't see why Maddie wouldn't make a full recovery. Dr. Templar paused. The police want to question Maddie about the incident, Dr. Templar said in a cautious tone. I figured. They've been here a lot, Michael replied with a sigh. Maddie suddenly started clicking her tongue, which caused everyone to snap their head in her direction. Maddie? Michael said as he reached for her hand. Matilda grabbed his hand and started sucking on his finger. What's happening? What is she doing? Michael asked as he looked over at the doctor. Some victims of such violence tend to act out some of the things that happen to them. That's one of the major signs of PTSD, along with violent outbursts, physical pain, nightmares or flashbacks, depression or anxiety, withdrawal, avoidance, repression, emotional numbing, hyperarousal, irritability, and guilt and shame. Withdrawal? Sam questioned. Yes, not interested in things she used to love, hobbies and such, Dr. Templar explained. Michael looked at Matilda, who continued to suck on his finger. She seemed to be staring off into space, oblivious to what was going on around her. I have set up some appointments, therapy, both mental and physical. I've scheduled for her to have oral surgery next week. Matilda is going to need you all now more than ever. She's been through a very traumatic experience, so be patient with her. Thank you, Doctor, Michael said in a tone of appreciation. Maddie, I'll see you next week, sweetheart. Okay? Dr. Templar asked, and waited patiently for Matilda to respond. I can't speak. Matilda looked up at Dr. Templar and slightly nodded. Bye now. Remember, patience is key, Dr. Templar said and left the room. Michael watched sadly as Matilda went back to sucking on his finger and stared off into space. When they arrived home, Samantha and Michael helped Matilda to her room. Once Matilda was settled in bed, Michael looked at Sam. She's lucky to have you as a friend, Michael stated in a sincere tone. Thanks, Mr. Lansing, she replied in a tone of appreciation. Michael, he corrected. You and Maddie have been friends all your lives. We're family. No need to be so formal, he added with a half smile. Good point. Maddie, honey, can I get you anything? Michael asked in a soft-spoken tone. Matilda looked up at him and shook her head. She reached out for his hand, pulled him down on the bed, and started sucking on his finger. Everything is going to be okay, Maddie. I'm going to take care of you like I always do. I promise, he assured her as he forced himself not to cry. Everything will be fine, Michael. Like Dr. Templar said, we just have to be patient with her, Sam said as she stroked Matilda's hair. I know. It's not us I'm worried about, though, he replied as he motioned toward the door with his head. She has been freaking out a lot since we got the call that Maddie was in the hospital, Sam said, referring to Frida. Michael nodded in agreement. Let's make a switch. I need to go talk to Frida, Michael said. Sam stuck her finger in Matilda's mouth at the same moment Michael removed his own. Thanks, Sam, Michael said and left the room. Michael spotted Frida on the couch when he entered the living room. He sat on the couch next to her and gently grabbed her hand. How are we going to afford these hospital bills, Michael? Frida questioned. Michael frowned. Is that really all you can think about? Matilda just went through this horrible ordeal that we know very little about, and all you can think about is how we're going to afford the hospital bills? What is wrong with you? You have to at least admit that these bills are going to be expensive. Fuck the bills, Frida. All that should matter is Maddie's well-being. He was yelling, but he was too upset with her to care. I am thinking about her well-being, Michael, and I really believe Maddie would be better off in an institution, Frida blurted out. What? He gasped. They are better equipped dealing with people like Maddie. I don't know the first thing about taking care of someone with a mental illness, she replied, exasperated. You've got to be fucking kidding me. Maddie deserves to be at home, surrounded by people she knows, not locked away in some mental institution with a bunch of complete strangers. What the fuck is wrong with you, Frida? We just got her back. Now you want to send her away? He said in a breathless tone. I don't think I can handle her like this, Michael. I swear you're the most selfish human being on the face of the planet, he said through clenched teeth as he tried to keep from yelling. Did you seriously just say you don't think you can handle me? Matilda asked in an angry tone as she picked up a lamp and chucked it at her mother's face. The lamp hit Frida right in the face and crashed to the floor. Frida screamed in pain. I'm your fucking daughter, you bitch! Michael ran over to Matilda and wrapped his arms around her to comfort her. Sam ran into the living room and gave Frida a hateful look. I'm not going to be used as your punching bag, Matilda. You have two choices here, Michael. You either put her in an institution or... She hesitated. Or what? He questioned in an angry tone. Frida said nothing more. Instead, she stormed out of the room. I'm so sorry, Maddie, Michael said in a soothing tone as he swept her up and held her against his chest. Michael looked at Sam and carried Matilda back to her room. He laid her on the bed and covered her with a blanket. Can you try to keep her in here while I talk to Frida? Sam nodded. Thanks, he said in a tone of appreciation and exited the room. He entered his bedroom and found Frida packing. What are you doing? Michael asked with a frown. I can't handle this, Michael. She threw a lamp at my face, she replied, fear in her tone. Dr. Tilber said we have to be patient with her. She went through this traumatic event and is suffering from PTSD because of it. She's your daughter, Frida. Are you really so selfish that you would abandon her like this when she needs you the most? I don't know who that is in there, Michael, but that's not my Matilda. Matilda is gone, she practically screamed. If you walk out that door, Frida, don't even think about coming back. Frida slammed the suitcase closed and zipped it up. I'm sorry, Michael. I just can't handle her like this. You shouldn't be apologizing to me, Frida. I still can't believe you're doing this. I'm sorry, she said again as she grabbed the suitcase. Goodbye, Michael, she added in a sad tone and left. Michael stood in the bedroom and stared at the empty space that Frida had just stood. Did Frida seriously just leave? Sam questioned in a whisper. Michael looked at her and nodded. Wow, what a bitch. Maddie's going to be devastated. Michael released a sad sigh. I'm going to go check on Maddie, Michael said and exited the room. Matilda laid on her side as she stared out the window. Michael knelt on the floor next to the bed and caressed her hair. I'm going to make a promise to you here and now, Maddie. I will always be here to love you and protect you. I will never abandon you, he assured her in a soothing tone. Matilda looked at Michael. I'm sorry, she whispered. Michael frowned. What could you possibly be sorry for, Maddie? I should have never went to that convenience store, she replied in a sad tone as tears streamed down her face. Maddie, that wasn't your fault. Things like this happen all the time. There's nothing anyone can do to prevent them from happening. I should have listened to Mom. Maddie, there's some things I need to tell you. What things? She asked curiously. Where's Mom? I'm sorry to have to tell you this, but your mom left, he replied in a sad tone. What? She questioned in an angry tone as she bolted up out of bed. She rushed out of the room, down the hallway, and into her parents' bedroom. Matilda noticed the top drawer of the dresser was open and empty. I can't believe this is happening. She wanted to put me away in a psychiatric hospital, and because you wouldn't agree to it, she leaves? Why is she so fucking selfish? Matilda screamed as she walked over to the vanity, punched it hard enough to shatter, and caused her knuckles to break open and bleed. Maddie, Michael gasped as he rushed to her side. I'm fine, she yelled. Besides, my heart hurts worse than my stupid hand. Sam ran into the room. What happened? Sam questioned in a tone of concern. Maddie punched the mirror, Michael replied as he examined Matilda's hand. It should have been my mother's face, Matilda said in a sad tone. Sam nodded in agreement. I'm so sorry, Maddie. I never expected her to do something like this. If it helps, I would never abandon you, Michael assured her. Neither would I, Sam said with a smile. Maddie, there are some things I've been wanting to tell you for a while that your mother didn't want me to tell you, Michael said in a cautious tone. Like what? Matilda questioned with a frown. You might want to sit down for this, he said. They made their way to the living room. Matilda and Michael sat on the couch next to each other. This seems like a family moment, so I'm just going to head home, Sam said as she made her way to the front door. Stay, Sam. You should hear this too. Besides, you are part of this family, Michael replied quickly. Okay, Sam said as she sat in the recliner. Now keep in mind, I wanted to tell you this Now keep in mind when I tell you this that I wanted to tell you from the start. Tell me what? Matilda asked in an impatient tone. Michael took a deep breath and let it out slowly. He ran his hands through his hair nervously. Is something wrong? Sam asked as she anxiously sat on the edge of the recliner. Oh my god, Michael, you're not dying, are you? No, Sam, I'm not dying. Just spit it out, Dad. It's like ripping a band-aid off. I'm not your biological father, he blurted out. Chapter 5. Matilda and Samantha gasped at the same time at Michael's confession. What the hell do you mean you're not my biological father? Matilda questioned, a stunned expression on her face. Your mother and I hadn't had sex in months when she got pregnant with you, he replied in a sad tone. Do you know the person she had an affair with? Matilda asked in a curious tone. Michael nodded. James. Uncle James is my biological father? Michael nodded again. Matilda's Uncle James was in prison for robbery, triple homicide, rape, and the distribution of drugs to minors. Does this mean you're my uncle? Matilda asked. No, you and I aren't related. I was adopted. So my whole life is just one big fat lie, Matilda screamed. No, of course not. I wanted to tell you, but your mother was against it. There's more I need to tell you, though, he replied in a cautious tone. What else could you possibly have to tell me? Matilda questioned with a frown. You have a half-brother. What? Really? What's his name? Where does he live? How old is he? She asked with excitement in her tone. I'll fix it later. I don't know his name or where he lives. We were 15 when your mother became pregnant with him. If he's still alive, which I don't see why he wouldn't be, he would be 24. I've been trying to find him, but I haven't had any luck. I'm really sorry, Maddie. Sorry for what? Not telling you sooner? That's not your fault. I blame Mom for all of this. She made you keep this information from me, Matilda pointed out. I'm still sorry. I shouldn't have listened to her. She was afraid you wouldn't be able to handle it, but I think she just used that as an excuse. Matilda wrapped her arms around Michael in a comforting hug. Thank you for refusing to put me away in an institution, Matilda said in a tone of appreciation. I would never put you through that. You need to be surrounded by people you know who love you and not a bunch of strangers, he pointed out. What would you have named him? I would have named him after me, Michael David Lansing, Jr. Oh, I would have named him after me. Michael David Lansing, Jr. Catchy, Matilda said with a half smile. Michael smiled back. I'm guessing you put him up for adoption? Michael nodded. Are you hungry? Michael asked. Famished, Matilda replied in an exaggerated tone. Michael hugged her. Sam sat on the other side of Matilda and joined in on the hug. We're here for you, Maddie, Sam whispered. Tears of joy streamed down Matilda's face. Do you feel like going out, or do you want me to have something delivered? Michael asked in a cautious tone. I'd rather just stay home if that's okay, at least until after I have the oral surgery. Of course it's okay. What are you in the mood to eat? Chinese, Matilda said, and gave Michael another half smile. Michael nodded and called to order the food. Sam scanned through the movies. Can we watch The Forbidden Dance while we eat? Matilda looked at Michael, who nodded. Sam squealed with excitement. This is my all-time favorite movie. I'll never understand why it wasn't popular. I would have to agree, Matilda said as she nodded. It's weird. I mean, it's based on a true story, Sam pointed out as she threw her hands up in the air. Food should be here between 35 to 40 minutes, Michael said after he got off the phone. Who plays in this movie again? Laura Herring, for one. Sid Haig. He played in House of 1,000 Corpses as the clown, Sam replied. Also, August Darnell. He was lead singer of Kid Creole and the Coconuts, Matilda said. Charles Mushak. He played as Van Driver in Child's Play 2. I've seen House of 1,000 Corpses and Child's Play 2, both great movies. Sid Haig makes a great bad guy in House of 1,000 Corpses, Michael said. We should watch that next, Sam suggested. No, I can't, Matilda said as she started to freak out. I can't handle any movies that involve torture right now. I just can't, she added as she started to cry. Michael wrapped his arms around her in a comforting hug. It's okay, Maddie. We won't watch it, he said in a soothing tone. I can't, Matilda repeated over and over as Michael rocked her and stroked her hair. What do we do? Sam mouthed. I don't know. Michael mouthed back. By the time the food showed up, Michael managed to calm Matilda down. They ate and watched the movie in silence. After they got done eating, they finished watching The Forbidden Dance and picked another movie. Matilda decided to go with The Wizard of Oz. She usually only watched it while eating spaghetti, but she wanted to see the Munchkins. They always cheered her up. Michael got them all a piece of chocolate cake with chocolate icing and rainbow sprinkles, Matilda's favorite. "Can I have some gummy bears with it?" Matilda asked in a low whisper. Michael almost didn't hear her question. He walked out of the room and came back moments later with a bag of gummy bears. He handed it to her. "Thank you," she said in a sad tone. "You're welcome, sweetheart," Michael replied as he rejoined her on the couch. Matilda stared at the bag of gummy bears for the longest time. Images of Sue being shot in the head flashed in her mind. An angry look formed on her face before she screamed and chucked the bag of gummy bears across the room. The gummy bears broke through the living room window and landed with a soft plop on the front porch. Michael and Sam looked from the broken window to each other, shocked expressions on their faces. Matilda stormed out of the room and dropped the cake on the floor in the process. She walked into the kitchen and threw open the pantry door. She grabbed the trash can and screamed as she threw each bag of gummy bears in the trash as she cursed under her breath. Michael rushed into the kitchen. "Maddie, what's wrong?" he asked as he took a cautious step. "They have to go. They all have to go," she said through clenched teeth. "Sue is fucking dead and it's all their fault." When she threw the last bag in the trash, she crumpled to her knees and sobbed uncontrollably. "How's she doing?" Sam asked Michael when he entered the living room. "She cried herself to sleep. You should go home and get some rest. She should be fine until morning. Thank you for helping me out with her today." "It was no problem. She's my best friend. I'd do anything for her," she said with a half smile. "She's lucky to have you." "And you," she commented. "You're a good father to her, even though you're not her biological father." "Thanks. She needs someone, and I was happy to take on that role." "See you tomorrow," Sam said with a smile and left. Michael locked the front door and went to bed. Michael was suddenly woken up by the feel of Matilda climbing on top of him, completely naked. Michael was also naked. Unable to control himself, his penis grew hard from the feel of her skin against his. Matilda wrapped her wetness around his erection and started to ride him. "Maddie?" There was no response. Was she sleepwalking? Matilda leaned over and kissed him as she ground her hips. "Michael," Matilda mumbled. "I love you." "I love you too, Maddie," he whispered back. Matilda rode him until they climaxed together. She groaned as she slid off him, laid next to him, and started sucking on his finger. Michael got out of bed, picked Matilda up, and carried her back to her bedroom. He gently laid her on the bed and covered her with a blanket. Matilda suddenly started screaming and thrashing in her sleep. "No, please don't hurt me." Michael climbed in the bed with her, wrapped his arms around her, and rocked her. "It's okay, Maddie. You're safe," Michael said in a soothing tone as he stroked her hair. Matilda groaned and rolled away from him. Michael was in the kitchen making breakfast when Matilda walked in the room. "Good morning," Michael said with a smile. "Morning. What are you making?" Matilda asked in a curious tone as she stepped up beside him. "Breakfast burritos. It's almost done." Matilda gave him a hug and sat at the table. Michael made them both a plate and joined her. "Do you remember anything that happened last night?" Michael asked in a cautious tone. "No. Why?" she questioned with a frown. "I was just curious. You had one hell of a nightmare. I had to calm you down. You were screaming and thrashing like crazy." "It was a horrible nightmare," she admitted and stared at her plate. "What was the dream about?" "Just reliving what happened to me," she replied sadly. "I'm here for you if and when you are ready to talk about it," he said in a cautious tone. "Thank you, but I don't want to talk about it," she replied abruptly. "You don't have to. I'm just saying that I'm here for you if you ever do want to talk about it." Matilda nodded and took a bite of her breakfast burrito. "Do I smell breakfast burritos?" Sam asked as she entered the kitchen. "Go ahead and make yourself one," Michael said with a chuckle. "Don't mind if I do," she replied and laughed. Sam made herself a breakfast burrito and joined them at the table. "Did you enter through my window again?" Matilda asked Sam in an agitated tone. "Don't I always enter through your window?" Sam pointed out and laughed again. "Well, knock it off! It freaks me the fuck out!" Matilda screamed and stormed out of the room. Sam looked at Michael. You have to understand, Sam. She's been through a lot and she's scared, Michael explained. Sam sighed and nodded. I'll use the front door for a while, she promised. I'll see you later, Mr. Lansing. Michael, he corrected. Sam stood, burrito in hand, and left. When Michael entered Matilda's room, he discovered her covering the window with a piece of cardboard. Do you need some help? Matilda screamed at the sound of his voice. Michael rushed to her side and wrapped his arms around her to comfort her. It's okay, Maddie. Everything is going to be okay, he said in a soothing tone. You're safe, he added in a low whisper. Where's Sam? She went home. Matilda frowned. Why? You yelled at her for climbing through your window, he replied with a look of confusion on his face. I did? Michael nodded. But she always climbs through my window. Are you saying you don't remember yelling at her? No, I don't remember that. Then you came to your room and covered the window with a piece of cardboard, he said as he pointed at the window. Matilda continued to frown as she looked at the window. Why don't we get out of the house for a little bit? Michael suggested. I have to run to the grocery store to pick up a few things anyway. Matilda sighed. Okay, she replied in a sad tone. When Matilda and Michael walked into the store, a few people stopped and stared at her. Matilda started to feel uncomfortable. Stop staring at me! Matilda screamed and ran out of the store. Michael ran after her. He caught up to her in the parking lot and gently grabbed her hand. Maddie, honey, it's okay. Just don't pay attention to them. It's hard not to. I could feel their eyes on me. They're probably just wondering what happened to you. That's usually my first thought when I see someone with visible scars. Try not to take it to heart. Matilda looked back at the store and sighed. We'll be quick, he promised. Matilda nodded and they headed back inside. Matilda made it through the aisles of the store without freaking out, screaming at someone, or storming out of the store. When they reached the checkout line, Matilda helped Michael unload the cart. Matilda tried hard not to look at the cashier, but it was unavoidable. The cashier suddenly had a bullet wound in his forehead, and Sue's face appeared. Help, Da, Sue pleaded. Matilda quickly covered her ears, closed her eyes, sunk to the floor, and screamed bloody murder as she sobbed. So that's the end of chapter 5. I'm in the process of working on chapter 6, so I will definitely, keep reading to you after I write another 5 chapters and so on and so forth. So just let me know down in the comments below what you think. I know it's kind of graphic, but I don't know what goes on in this mind, but it's some crazy shit. So just let me know down below what you think, if you want me to continue or not. If you don't want me to, I understand that, because like I said, it's a lot to take in. There's a lot of violence. There's sexual assault and rape and foul language and all that crazy jazz. But so yeah, I'm gonna go ahead and I will get at you guys in the next video.